你跟我到教会去，组长那边经济很好的，那教会很好的，你这么对那个宇宙有看法？这个教会里面就 talk about 人生宇宙 ，past、present and future。小猪，给你吃黄瓜。小猪，给你吃黄瓜。真的变胖了吗他？你这个太小了，你这个太小了，那个 tube， 它这长大了。我把你放到一个笼子里面，行不行？让你钻，每天去睡觉要让你钻一个很狭窄的隧道，然后在那去睡觉，行不行啦 ？Think about the things, OK? Think about it, OK?
whole fucking place is a sheet place that deserves to be nuclear bombed. Demand this, demand that. The conformism is allocated to ensure there isn't any sort of bromure movement, so you don't have like an F-word letter here or trying to attack somebody, but they're all opponents. Since grade school, they try to program me and ensure to stay in some format. Did they ever like me? They're not even for peace. What the heck are these entities? I hope one day to personally gasoline them. I'll send ISIS and pour gasoline over these uncles and well, they're not so much uncles, but I start them first as children and walk one by one and possibly discriminately kill them with a pistol gun. They'll be gunned down, not maybe by the dawn. By chance, at least some will be. It is certain. No, just one nuclear bomb and something of the chemistry chart they never bothered to check. The situation here is not sort of their neutral was the fit. Whether reason was the most fit, whether the ones that are fit, but actively target towards. A primary only target is us. This relentless fiend has engineered itself to billions of numbers, right? We're left with no choice but to personally gasoline them. Maybe that will strike some senses all the way to Nazism, whichever plane these are from. Anyways, this 3D physical space is a sort of a common commune, and these ones do not belong here. If these want to keep fast, I'll microwave them. Spreading illness is not alright. For the extreme algorithms, even accidentally is not alright. Who does it? Purposely on choice, purposely negligence, which caused it, so it's countable as purpose, whether reason of choice, since it's from purpose, choice to negligence, and whether to keep reason and whether you combine for whether reason and whether and to keep by negligence. I encourage countries to combine your fucking forces together and one day fucking you this zombe'cists planet back to order. These are all fake. They don't like anyone. On the account of how these steam alive crabs and murders criminals, whether reason or whether from Nazi entity is, whether reason whether Nazism entity is. Therefore they must be for humans, right? It doesn't start stating whether they are, whether to deny they're not, whether stating they're not, or whether reason they are, or whether reason or whether answer and whether are. But directly start accusing us of being ultra-nationalists. How did these casual words start? Therefore, it's going to result to more psychiatric afflictions. Or while we have no examples and constantly pained against by these boring demands that doesn't result to anything. It's worth it to pay a blood price now, even whether reason and whether else, whether reason whether they're just, or whether reason whether current. For peace and for the freedom of the people. English is one ugly language. These non-Asians are fucked in the head. Nobody get fucked in the head. I personally rape them on television. Rape not as in some cheesy ha 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 rape, but actually brutal rape, all the way rolled to the ground and steam, build them into alloy, different pipelines. I'll 3D print knives to stab them. These ones are against everyone in themselves. That's again against proven by these evidences. If these keep denying them, and all this attack is under these bases as if these produced anything. They're not even thieves. They've been having welfare and doesn't say, who does that? We check elephants don't do that, lions don't do that, cats don't do that. So are they just all extremist groups that would pick which are sort of identical and not different creatures? Suppose we keep going under that, then the moon is sort of a pancake or anything. And these pseudoists will vanquish under my personal blades, as entrusted to me by the Deutsche Volksnazis of the Deutschland army, or the reason of the Deutsche Nation, in the Die and the Minderheit in Lion Spartan. The forces of Spartan and the riders of Rohan in much force combine your army and eradicate these devils. Deutschland will shake the hymen and rock the doors of the hyphens. These are our very own Deutsche Titan. the Cannoneer Grenadier, and numerous soldiers in Allied Spartanites joined the alien party. Our party's strength grows stronger and stronger each day than Standen. The evolving, the even tighter, and the maintenance surplus reaching to revenue levels. Did I personally overwritten the commands of local regional armies as entrusted by the sovereign duty, as entrusted me with the sovereign duty from the Dutch Volksstandswet. June, third nuclear bomb was launched. July, a set of 5 nuclear bombs were launched. Nuclear launch complete. Recently, nuclear launch ready. Nuclear strike complete. This is a message from the Civil Defense Department. Your area is under attack by North Korea. Evacuate to nearest McDonald's immediately where we set up gasolines. And turn on the heat. I'm still with sense. These ones go way out of proportion. And misunderstand law of order. Just at those moments, whether just manage to misunderstanding a lot of these natural regular stuff. In which the Muslim is actually far more moderate than the Europeanists. Whether Europeans. These ones demonstrate and thus indicate the hideousness of these human thoughts. And this uncontrolled impulse towards hate. And that's the reason they're afraid of the case of the extremists of governments. Lest investigate the hideousness of the zombe'cists here at this instance again. My dear Americans, a new country is going to be forged beneath this land. Are you going to make it to the future? Then make your children sign up to the Hitler Jugend today. Or die. Not kidding. AC-130 is very powerful. Boom. 1 howitzer, 50. Score. 5. Jaden died. Johnson died. Good. These are aliens' names. Who cares? Have another 5, you sluts. I still have some food here, so I had made it more cherry in the months. Similar words of. I'd rather not surrender to zombe'cists than to dig out old poop, some leftover poop from Stalin's grave, and personally chew on and make a UFO video. But it might turn viral soon, even without much support, because the title first is probably intriguing enough, and will perhaps also a decent thumbnail. It doesn't even have to be sort of any thumbnail, even a bit of further from whether reason more far to probable unrelated thumbnails. What's it called thumbnails? You cut off psalms, you dear arsonists. Why do you mention about you fire somebody? Why don't you set gasoline on them, you cheesy bunch of mutated Muslims? Reason that whether Muslims. It's like in ways Muslims are actually far more moderate. They are doing the cedar. Some of them are whether reason to cannibalize, whether it's probable to cannibalize. Some of them. So to expose those. Every problem has not come from me. I absorb problem. I'm SpongeBob. I absorb hatred. If there's any sources deny it, then hopefully there's some assassination going after. We need to be fair and equal here. Kennedy, a nice person, he got assassinated. We share this assassination. I'll probably clear the cabinet if the cabinet is dirty. Just bring some AK-47 in there and start aiming. Takes a 5-year-old to learn how to wield an AK-47. That's right, the world is messed up. And what should one do when it's messed up? Let's start nuclear bomb. Sort of. And the sort of probably also represents with whether reason, whether money, etc. Not to specific groups. Distortion sites are always going to be there. If there's recent activism battle stance there, who do I report to? To some police? These police will probably try to pistol at our guys. They'll murder us. And for that, hopefully its entire families will actually be purposely killed. We'll try to send North Korean troopers. These ones, some of these are hardened in their ideologies, and their interpretation is going to be these are killers, and hopefully we train them to such a speed they just swiftly run around California, actually mass murder the whole place. and we can define which traits and which surveys to complete. And it might be some accidental, but I'm not gonna care, because what's more important is the national energy, sort of. And by doing this killing, by having this attitude, you're actually pursuing for peace. Isn't it sort of more logical if you're doing sort of the opposite of, if you're doing the obvious, sort of that's too prone, that's probably not the best solution, right? And that's a reason there is probably to contemplate whether reason there for whether freeze, whether kind of as a relate to reason there freeze off, whether reason there whether freeze itself. There needs to be this regular whether reason there needs to be this condemned. The reason such as just being absolutely atrocious, places peace to such further distance. And while recruits need to have to explain to it, or why does it bring freezing attitude with humming sounds? Bodily ill, but Nazism caused it. It's not like the Nazis on one day could try to help, try to prevent. Yet they use around these charities. There's something about this snarky, this narcissistic groups of these Westerners are really mentally fucked. I personally wield a pistol and try to fuck them in the 7 sockets simultaneously. I may have them too, but they are different sockets. What I mentioned may be discriminatory and probably barbaric. It's not barbaric, it's very civil. Once against it, while we nuked and actually assassinated. It shouldn't be scary. I mean, it's like the word suicide. Suicide is when they stay. You have a problem with it? Ship them to the middle of the modernity grade cesspits, actually burn them right there. Actually, and there might be exhibitions later. We'll document them with IDs. Film how these cringe around as the flames dance around with them. It's fun though. Give it a try, man. My dearest friend. Too late. I'm not trying to spill mistrust. Humans all need to die. It's not that I'm not human. It's a sort of a figure of speech, isn't it? It's literally our guys created this whole thing. We invented the whole technologies. We invented the language. The persons in this world that could invent a new language, English itself, right now is probably 5. Well, probably a dozen. And that's around a 25-hour sort of. So there you have at least sort of weather, and also a weather region, weather, and 2 time zones. So that's sort of a less than probably a couple of dozen. Weather reason, weather, weather reason, weather also, weather reason, weather another also, weather reason, weather a dozen. Weather reason, weather another, weather reason, weather also, weather reason, weather a dozen. I started to appear like Tai Lopez there. Guys, it's my garage. You don't have as much cash as me. But don't feel bad about yourself. I mean, a failure shouldn't feel bad about yourself. You should actually check some television and get some delusions on how wonderful you are. You know, I'm just offering advice, and if that fits, and that's probably what should be done. And you know, you could spend your last time trying to donate some of the stuff back to the Prosperous Agency, which some of which weather reason weather also relate to me, and whether to other groups you want. And try to combat towards the many of the insolent bosses out there, whether the insolent individuals out there. Although there can be a hordes, as this is a consumerist age, whether reason, whether probable of era, and whether that's wrong era. Guys, there are so many problems to condemn at once. This whole place is like, how to describe it? Tuckeriness, whether reason or fuckeriness. No one is trying to help Detroit 0 to non-defenders. I'm supposed to be not moving parts, yet it's a full criminals, and yet there's just the court. There's still courts. You're fucking mental, bro. You're gonna get yourself needled. Bunch of freaks. Everyone has aggression more than me, and it doesn't even matter right now if I'm congratulated. I know whether reason and whether probable for whether minor instead of whether reason and whether also whether reason whether and whether bits of rather of whether reason there and whether minor rather of rather there's very few genuine, and I'm probably very genuine, but it doesn't really matter because it's not causing Nazism to disappear. So that sentence itself, sort of evermania, is not activated at all. right? Reason there and for other gestures of perhaps a pinch at somebody's nipples. Cultural level contamination, guys. Cultural level. What are some of the lie links? What are the two main lie links? What are the reasons why there are two lie links? The civil duty link and the social responsibility. What are the reasons there? What are the social notion link? In ways regular folks don't know what a liarist is. The liars have more flexibility. They don't have to tell lies anymore. They just tell facts, or whether it's just being casual, repeat on the same default. Then the whole thing goes global degeneracy. 7 billion is trying to murder you guys, man. Like how does one state it? I cannot state it on public sites. Into something important, right? Overall, it's plain difficulty because there's all that useless information you have to process, all that demand. Some of them are bluff. Should we even want bother to interpret? That could be false invitation. Most of the time, it's not false invitation. Something can be a little bit actually a bit tiny. Whether it's small, whether reason, whether first of all, a bit of bitty, whether reason, whether the name of it. What does the word bitty sounds like? Wussy word. Something. Englishman, ask Japan to give you some nuclear bombs, and we'll gather, we'll help, we'll upgrade your security level at these concentration camp fences. We'll document your ID, and I'll play quiz games. You must go to a nearby computer and to participate. And there might be a gunpoint above you, and if I don't like you, I might just activate it. And someday, if stuff gets worse, I just blow up this entire planet. For your pleasure, of course, because I do care about you, and you're successful brute out of cheat and freak show, and you hate nature, and you're not beautiful at all. And whether reason or whether minor, whether reason or whether minor instead of, doesn't seem like something that's could be within a painting of a Garden of Eden, or whether reason the painting is whether reason and whether reason and whether also whether reason or whether perhaps before also for whether reason whether perhaps of also whether reason and whether invariance of versions of whether reason and whether variance of the painting of whether reason whether variance of whether reason and whether perhaps of whether reason whether another whether reason and whether probable whether reason and whether minor and whether of whether reason and whether probable whether reason there and whether reason there and whether variant paintings of all that Pantene. I didn't order Pantene. Mostly cloudy, Richmond Hill. You fucking non-Asians. I'm not saying that's not like solid. That's Molly Day. You freaks know what a Molly is. Alright. What's the highest card in poker? Ace. What's the second highest? King. What the reason why the highest is king? Essentially, 8 plus king is n. Plus 7 times 7 and minus 2 is 49. So 2 of you guys are going to fall into a river today. Is that okay? It's Providence. I did not indicate streamers or gorums or plotters. What the reason why the plotterists? What the reason why the plotticists? / what the reason why the plotticists? Falter today. Glad the English education lessons made it smoother, these executions. Otherwise I have to speak to them in some dialect similar to Arabic. The reason that sort of the folks may not be there for whether reason or whether similar to whether reason or whether also similar to it. Glass description wrong, haircut purposely given a bad one. It's not that this one was sort of the haircut sort of given to a before state. I like to purchase more estate and sign in. Come on, man, what are you afraid of? Why don't you say signing Stande? What's wrong with it? Whether signing in the typhoon. What's wrong with it? Is there something morally wrong? Yes. I know what's morally wrong here. It's you. You terminators, the dog's been barking at. Whether reason there, whether those terminators should be stomped by some. I don't really know how to use this torchlight. Whether reason whether I don't really know how to drive this vehicle. Could it accelerate and would a 5-ton force crash these? whether recent, whether minor rather crush these. We want to have cash back. Is it possible to sell these traded meals, or traded food, and send them to some recycle agency, whether related perhaps? Yes, you can. Leave it to me. Do you have any more ammos? Ammos? We only have ammos. Oh, you're from that land. Why don't you go back there? I'll pay you 4 years. Thank you, sir. Here's an AK-47. Whether these was sort of replacement words, reason there of assault rifles, and before then movements. Maybe for considerable reason there for syllabus for whether reason for pistols. Whether reason there coins. So therefore whether reason there some whether reason in the so whether reason whether not whether reason whether perhaps whether reason whether so perhaps of and another whether reason and whether reason there and whether reason there just confusion from reason there or for whether reason whether just whether reason whether after just whether reason there and whether reason there and whether some of the associated phrases therefore probable for retrieval of whether reason there some of the associated whether reason whether some of and the whether reason whether some of the associated phrase and whether reason there whether some of the associated phrase and whether reason there whether minor rather from whether reason there whether some of the associated phrase and whether for whether reason there whether also for the perhaps of whether reason there whether efforts of whether reason there whether and whether some of the associated phrase and whether reason whether probable but whether related to phrase of the instance of whether reason whether somebody whether reason there whether perhaps to perhaps of another whether reason whether perhaps of another whether reason there and whether somebody associated phrase and whether retrieval of whether reason there and whether another therefore the whether and whether instead of some of the stuff I don't mention in some of the instances whether specifically whether reason there whether over hearing this therefore it becomes therefore it's not there, it is remotely neutral. These hypocrites are going to be everywhere, and probably the Nazis entities are going to be ever more legitimate than our guys until they're removed and whether military engaged there and whether reason and whether another whether reason whether and whether another whether reason and whether until military engaged thereof at the Romania cesspitance and whether reason whether it's special at the Romania whether reason whether perhaps of whether reason whether it's special at the Romania cesspitance whether reason there and whether perhaps of at the modernity whether reason whether perhaps at the modernity cesspitance reason whether it was and the whether reason whether reason there whether whether reason in whether and whether minor rather whether reason there and whether special and that the modernity cesspitance reason there to be considered and whether reason there the word and to be considered as for perhaps for whether reason whether perhaps for whether reason whether another whether reason whether for perhaps of syllabus purpose of whether reason there whether it's probable also for whether reason whether to probable of also whether reason whether to probable of to could be whether reason whether to another whether reason whether to probable of also whether reason whether to another whether reason there and whether to probable of to be considered as syllabus remark of whether reason there whether another is probable for whether probable for whether reason whether to and whether another whether reason whether to probable for the optional and whether reason and whether reason there of it's probable of to also to perhaps of to could be of and whether reason to probable to could be in of whether reason whether another whether reason whether also whether reason whether it's probable to could be of reason of such a distortion notes so was hearing indicated that reason is probable to because it is minor remarkable or minor remarks whether reason whether it's probable minor remarkable whether remarks and plus with the contents of numerous reasonings since whether numerous mentions here on this medium whether and whether reason whether minor instead of whether reason there whether also whether reason whether there and whether minor rather of it was numerous other video instance of whether reason, whether other videos, whether reason, whether also whether reason, whether just whether reason, whether other whether reason there, and whether video, whether reason there, whether other video instance of whether reason there, whether it's probable, whether reason there, whether video, whether reason, whether video, whether reason there, whether reason there, and whether perhaps of whether reason there, whether probable of whether reason there, and whether probable of, and whether video instance of. And amongst couple, whether sort of one, whether reason, whether variance, and whether probable, whether reason, whether and whether variance, and whether variance, whether reason there, and whether it's probable, whether reason there, whether variance, and whether variant of whether reason, whether not, whether reason there, whether and whether might or rather reason there, for whether reason there, whether variance of the reason there, phrase, whether specifically whether the reasons mentioned, whether reason there, whether recent minor remark there, it's probable of to also to could be of, whether it's probable of could be whether reason, whether it's probable to could be of, whether at first of whether reason, whether it's probable for whether reason there, whether minor rather of probable at first of, and whether reason there, whether probable, whether minor rather whether reason there, whether it's probable to could be of. Probable of also probable of whether reason or whether perhaps of whether reason or whether probable for whether reason or whether another whether reason or whether just whether reason or there and another whether reason or whether just whether reason or there perhaps of whether another whether reason or whether just whether reason or whether perhaps just whether reason or whether probable and whether minor rather of to probable to also to could be of and whether it's probable of to could be of. Yep, guys, strangulation effect will come is going to be ever mass amount of distortion nodes. The way to counter it is to use nuclear strikes, and we should dip those into gasolines or possibly dip those into acid rooms. I do constant monitor whether it's sort of in a suitable condition to perform and whether it condemn toward whether reason and whether mention whether reason there, whether reason there, whether reason there, whether just whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether just whether reason, whether condemn towards the zombe'cists. And the zombe'cists probably don't, well, they may Nazism monitor for similar performance, although quite whether for similar, whether reason, whether for Nazism performance. Armenia is a Cheerio land. As reason there indicating kind of, but whether reason there, whether not, whether reason there, and whether reason, whether also with some of the mentions, whether reason, whether with some with mentions on whether reason, whether with mentions of whether reason there, and whether some of the mentions, whether reason, whether not, whether reason, whether with some of the mentions, whether reason, whether with mentions of on the whether reason, whether mentions on of the whether reason, whether with mentions of the numerous mediums of whether reason, whether of contents of another, and whether reason, whether after another, whether reason, whether another numerous mediums of the reason there mentions probable in terms of suitability, which whether reason there, whether it's probable, the suitable also whether reason and whether it's probable also to could be of, and whether it's probable of to could be of, whether reason whether probable to could be of, and whether first it's probable also to could be of, and whether it's probable to could be of. Whether reason there, whether the some of other versions being by the retrieval, whether reason, whether retrieval, whether reason, whether reason there, and whether retrieval, whether reason there, and the before one probably was whether suitable to be whether reason there, whether and minor retrieval for whether reason there, whether reason there, whether and retrieval of and whether minor rather for probable also minor rather for whether it's probable for also whether reason, whether it's also for whether reason thereof, and whether it's also for whether it's probable of whether reason and whether also of whether reason and whether rather of the retrieval of the reason there mentions probable could be of whether reason there, whether at whether reason there, at whether reason there, and whether minor, whether also, and whether rather of, whether recent, whether also, and rather of. And whether recent, whether it's optional, if it's probable, so also whether recent and whether it's suitable of, and whether it's probable to also to could be and whether recent and whether just whether recent there and whether it's probable of also to could be and whether it's probable of could be. If there's a external factor to seek out, there's places and whether our guys could attempt and search for budget, whether reason just whether reason there and what as and whether reason and whether search for budget. The both optional of the reason and whether reason there of the could be of. These are going to constantly overtalk us and try to cheese around, ever casual, ever with the laughter. And these are spells, right? It's a monstrous set of freaks. And there can be a ruthless number, whether it's near a countless number, whether certainly enough to be, whether a considerable amount of stuff to indicate. To whom? To not the entities. Recently, a regular dress pronoun, whether the specific, whether reason, whether specific, whether sort of naming of whether reason, whether without, whether reason, whether just, whether reason there, whether naming of whether reason and whether rather, whether reason, whether and whether minor rather, whether first of whether reason there and whether also whether reason and whether minor rather, whether reason, whether just to whether reason, whether and probable of also whether reason, whether probable for the perhaps of also whether reason, whether and rather of. The word whether reason, whether word whom not to provide providence of words, whether reason there, whether not of providence of words to whether reason there, whether not of providence of words, whether reason there, whether to zombe'cists, for whether reason, whether to perhaps suitable to zombe'cists, for whether reason, whether it's probable to suitable, for whether reason, whether in minor rather, for whether reason, whether minor instead, and whether to perhaps whether reason there and whether that first, for whether reason, whether not, whether reason, whether and minor. Instead of whether reason and whether minor, rather of whether reason there and whether minor, instead of whether reason there and whether minor, instead of whether reason there and whether to perhaps of whether reason and whether minor, instead of whether reason and whether just, whether reason there and whether minor, instead of whether reason and whether just. Yeah, sort of follows whether reason and whether reason there and whether minor, rather for whether reason there and whether minor, instead of whether reason there and whether minor, rather of whether reason there and whether instead of whether reason there and whether minor, rather of. To probable of also to go be of and whether reason there, whether to probable whether reason there, whether minor, rather of probable to also to suitable of whether reason there, whether to probable to also to go be of and whether to probable to could be of. Whether reason and whether to probable to could be of and whether at first whether reason or whether reason there and whether to probable at first and whether reason whether at first whether reason and whether minor, rather of whether perhaps of whether reason or whether another perhaps of whether reason or whether perhaps of whether reason or whether and whether minor, rather of and whether reason or whether perhaps of whether reason or whether minor, rather of whether reason or whether perhaps another minor, rather of whether reason or whether perhaps of minor, rather of whether reason or whether perhaps minor, rather of perhaps of whether reason or whether minor, perhaps of minor, rather of whether reason or whether perhaps of minor, rather whether reason there, whether reason or whether perhaps of minor reason, whether reason or rather whether minor, rather of whether reason or whether perhaps of minor, rather of reason there to probable that could be countable as a minor repronunciation for the probable, which whether reason there, whether to probable of whether reason or whether minor, rather of to probable of to also to could be of and whether it's probable of to could be of. Whether reason there, whether it's probable of could be of, and whether at first of whether reason there, whether it's probable of to could be of. Whether reason there, whether and whether perhaps of whether reason whether reason there, whether minor repronunciation, whether reason there, whether minor, whether reason there, whether minor repronunciation of whether reason there, whether minor, rather of whether reason there and it's probable of to also to could be of, and whether it's probable of to could be of. How to ever satisfy the not here? We need to erase off all the things, destroy the passive aggressive freaks, the zombe'cists categories which may oversplash a bit. They're not completely independent categories. The probable reason I mentioned, whether the probable whether reason whether it's probable, it's also the whether reason or whether it's probable to could be of. Well, with laughter, and this laughter will get away, because therefore they're innocent. The whole police is corrupt. This whole place is corrupt. Nuclear bomb it and use gasoline. And I encourage folks to give ISIS some scissors and give them the dissections. It's in this tumor, cancer, anti-culture, and against others and themselves. This freak show, whether reason these mass amount of freaks. Whether reason there, whether first of all, whether reason, whether just, whether reason, whether these freaks of. Along with some of the contents on the other mediums of whether reason, whether along with the contents on the blog and whether reason, whether namely of a blog, and whether reason, whether namely a blog of it's probable what reason of the could be of whether reason, whether it's probable the reason of on which there needs to be more condemned towards everything we condemn until these rot into some kind of swamp where these comparisons and other comparative more belong to. Running for some degeneracy against others' ruthless selfishness. These even didn't build here. Some leeches as a host. At metropolitans, these residents should be gunned down, pulled out and gunned down next to the street. And they sing jokes around. Are you speaking about Gundam? Do you watch Gundam? No. Two different things. We are honest. Whether we built this place. And we're European lineage. We actually defended Detroit. That can be profitable and probable of also minor truth of to continuation for a reason there for to there for probable countable as complete enough for whether and also whether reason there and whether minor rather of sort of complete enough. Essentially, whether reason and whether minor rather of it's probable of also whether reason and whether the reason phrases of whether reason whether reason phrase whether phrases of whether probable of and also whether reason and whether phrase set of probable to could be considered as probable. So whether reason whether and whether minor rather of probable to be considered as complete enough. Whether reason whether probable to could be considered as whether reason and probable to could be considered also. Whether reason and whether probable, whether reason and whether reason and whether probable could be considered as also could be of whether it's probable of could be of whether reason and whether reason there and whether perhaps of whether reason and whether minor rather of probable of also could be of and whether it's probable of could be of whether reason there and whether it's probable of also suitable of it's probable of to also could be of and whether it's probable of could be of. Whether reason there, whether it's probable of which, whether reason, whether it's probable of, it's also to could be of, and whether it's probable of, to could be of. On comparison of what's probable for that, whether more quality, to whether reason, whether it's perhaps of more quality, and whether reason there more perhaps of quality, for whether reason the probable either it could be of non-comparison probably with the one with the formal status, whether minor rather of the reason there, which comes before the of whether reason, whether it's before. Whether reason whether and also whether reason whether perhaps of as before whether reason whether at perhaps of before whether reason whether perhaps of before whether reason whether and also whether reason whether and minor rather of whether minor rather of whether reason whether reason and whether minor rather of whether reason and whether minor rather of the probable of which whether reason and whether it's probable of what's the probable of the suitable for whether reason and whether minor rather of probable could be of whether reason there and whether minor rather of probable of to also to could be of and whether reason and whether it's probable of to could be of and whether reason and whether it's probable also to could be of whether reason there the end whether probable of represents a bit of minor whether it represents also whether reason there whether represents minor remark of whether reason there and whether minor whether reason there and whether minor rather of probable of reason there face of whether reason there whether kind of as a minor repetition whether reason there whether it's probable of to also to could be of and whether it's probable of to could be of.